Oh, she just jumped out. Okay.
Hey everyone, it's Nick here from Roofer, and we have Corey Combs back for another session of building a winning sales presentation. So, really excited to see everyone in today and get everybody in here. And we'll give it a couple seconds, but I'm excited for this one. I've been excited to see the iterations that we're growing on this, Corey. And of course, we don't have Pete here today, unfortunately. He is at
Bummed.
Rise right now, which is yeah, I know. It's me. You have to deal with me apparently, but he's at Rise right now at a sold out place in Atlantic City. So excited for that, and excited for today. What are we going to be talking about today, Corey?
Today, we're going to talk about the keys to building a great presentation and how to use your proposal as that presentation. I think one of the things that one of the terms that sort of gets interchangeably used is proposal, presentation, estimate, things like that. So I want to clarify a little bit on how we use our proposal, like something like Roofer's proposal, and how we use that as a presentation. I think more importantly, how we use that as a sales tool. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Awesome. So really excited to get going on it. Before we start, I did want to give you a little bit of a shout out here. I gave you a little bit of a warning before, but our own Corey Combs here on the big stage at RoofCon at the 8-figure CEO panelist. So really excited to see you there, man. Congrats.
Thank you. And if anybody knows the history of me and my cult comment, it wasn't directed necessarily at RoofCon. It was just some of the stuff that was going on at the time, and it's pretty funny. And what's really great about those guys is they took it, they ran with it. It's been a joke, and they're good dudes, man. I'm happy to be there.
Really excited to have you up there, man. You completely deserve it for what you built, and I think that ties into our first bit of the slide there. So let's talk a little bit about you and why we should be listening to you.
Okay. Well, I'm going to share my screen here. So I started in roofing in 1995. I worked as a installer, so I worked on the roof. Started on a tear-off crew, and then got into shingling and doing roofing. In 2007, the end of 2007, construction took a, tanked before 2008 happened. And so I ended up having to go to work for a fitness marketing company. I had a friend of mine who owned the company. It was a national fitness marketing company. And so I went to work with him, and I learned the fundamentals of sales and how to structure your presentation, structure all your materials, your process around closing the sale and understanding how to do it to get the objections out and all of that stuff. So I learned that from them. I became their top producer, their top sales guy after 6 months. I was really good at it. And then after a year, I became their sales trainer. And so what I did was traveled all over the country, and I trained sales teams for this organization. Then 2011, I got sick of traveling. I got back into construction. I was getting in construction sales. My first year sold over $1 million. And then the rest of my career, I sold 2 and 3 million. And I was the first at these companies. I was the first person to ever sell over $2 million. I did a lot of training at that time. I went to IRE. I went to KBIS, which KBIS was a international kitchen and bath trade show. And I went to that over a few years. And I took all the classes I could on selling and in-home presentations and demos and all that stuff. And so I had a really successful sales career. And I was a sales manager for one of those companies, and I built the sales team, trained the sales team. I know some of the guys still over there, and they're killing it. And then I started my company in 2018, and I've in 4 years have built my company an 8-figure retail company in a storm market in Florida. And so these principles, all my sales team, very successful. These principles translate really, really well. I've been using them for years, and now I just want to teach people how to use, how to use these tools.
I remember always talking about that. You and I have developed like a good friendship over the years. I think you think of me as a friend, but I think of you as a friend for
I
sure. But
absolutely do. I wouldn't text you at 8 p.m. asking for restaurant recommendations if I didn't think we were friends.
That's true. That's true. But I always talk to people about you and being like, when they ask about like proper sales process and why I'm so obsessed with, obviously, Process Pete, our co-host that's not here today, why we're so obsessed with it is like because it changes your entire business flow. And I always use you as the example. And when people are talking about like, well, what do you mean by that? And I was like, well, there's a guy named Corey Combs out of Tampa where he's built an 8-figure company doing retail in a store market. And that's all because of process and everything else there. So thanks, Jalen, for the stash. It's Movember is around the corner. um, but yeah, so it's really amazing to see that, and that's what I always like, kind of like shining on how big of a deal process and steps are. And just to kind of, because this is part 2, I just want to do a quick recap before we go into what we're doing today.
Yeah,
But last time we did this, we talked about the 7 steps to qualify and how to prep a customer for that initial meeting. Is that correct?
right. We talked about the 7 game changers at your inspection. So we talked about how to structure your intake process for maximum success, setting your sales team up for maximum success, and then what the measure, what the inspection needs to look like from a sales context while you're talking to the homeowner or the building owner. And everything that I want to preface, everything we're going to talk about, everything is built on how do we sell our jobs the most effective. There's a lot of other training out there about, how to do technical training, how to spot damage, all of that stuff. What we're talking about is the processes in which you can put in your company to help improve your close rate, but more than that, help your company stand out from all the other noise that's out there when you're talking to the homeowner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, I'm excited to hear and see what you got today. I know the people in the chat and in the audience are too. By the way, everyone, we're going to be making pauses in different sections to talk and re-engage you guys with some questions this week. So if you do have any questions, any comments, put it in the comment in the chat there, and Corey and I will be sure to jump on that when we can. So Corey, and on that note, why don't you take it away?
All right. Awesome.
I do have a question for you as we're about to start. Is that background real or is that a background? Because it's
I love it.
clean.
Somebody else asked me that. It's a real background.
That is clean. That's awesome.
Thank you. I was trying to make it clean and understated. All right. So a few notes here. So why, we're going to talk about the presentation today, and why is a presentation so important? A presentation is an opportunity for you to talk to your homeowner and give them the information that you need them to know, the important information that they need to know in order to make a good decision, a good buying decision. So the way that we do that is we present information to them, which whether you do a formal presentation or not, you're always presenting information to the homeowner. How you present that information is critical, and you need to do it in a way that's going to further you as the logical next step for them. So that's why a presentation is so important. You're going to give them an estimate, or you're going to present them some sort of information with shingle color books or product books or whatever it is. You need to have a methodology in order to be able to do that so that you can close the sale. So that's why a presentation is so important. Who is this training for? This training's for roofing contractors. This training's for siding contractors. This training is for general contractors. It does not matter. The principles and the framework that we're going to talk about today, it stretches across the entire industry. So you can use these principles and these methods. It doesn't matter what you sell. And then I get this one all the time. It's like, well, I'm a restoration contractor. I don't do a ton of retail. You know, why would I use these tools? Why would I do a presentation? From my perspective, it doesn't matter if you're a storm restoration contractor. You go out, you knock doors, you get an inspection. After you do the inspection, you've still got to have a next steps conversation with the homeowner, whether it's filing the claim, whether there's nothing there and maybe you just need to repair or whatever. So you're always going to have a next steps conversation with the homeowner. A visual presentation will help you walk through those next steps, whatever they are with the homeowner, and you'll be able to set yourself apart. Let's say there's a fresh storm. You hit the house, you're the first one in. You want to have a nice visual presentation so they understand the information, they see you as professional, and you're able to get them on your side and move them along the process in a manner that you want them to, so that you don't lose them as a client. This is a tool that works for retail or storm. You just have to understand where it fits. And I can promise you that if you use something like this, it'll make a huge difference when you meet with your homeowner and you get them and you walk them down what's next, the next steps. So
That's a big point. That's a big point that you put in there. I wanted to just put a bow on that with you too. Is it doesn't matter if you're retailer or there. What you're doing is separating yourself and showing your value to them. And I actually almost think that it's more important for restoration contractors to be looking at this than just retail. It's important, equally important, but like when you're talking about restoration, you guys are normally chasing a storm. So you have an influx of contractors from that market and around that market attacking that homeowner. So how are you separating yourself from the competition and holding on to them? So I love that point that you made there.
Huge. So what are we going to cover today? This is not a next steps training on what to do, how to build a presentation, so to speak. I'm not going to give you a step-by-step how you build your presentation. What I'm doing is I'm going to train you on the framework that you build it with. So understanding how you build it, what needs to be in it, and how you use it to close the sale. So we're going to talk about the sales fundamentals our presentation is built on. So understanding why we put certain information in these presentations and the buying frames, the principles of effective sales presentation, the framework on how to build your presentation, and how this helps you close business. Okay. So our sales approach, the proposal is a sales tool. And in order to understand how to properly use the tool, you need to understand, why we're doing certain things with the tool. And so many sales trainings, they focus on the DISC model of understanding personality type of your buyer. I've seen this training a lot. I've heard about it a lot. I still hear people reference this. I think it's valuable. The DISC is it's valuable, but in practice, it's less useful than understanding how people buy. So instead, we focus on buying frames. Then there's 4 buying frames that people use to make buying decisions, to make purchases. The first frame is the fear of loss frame. The second is the experience frame. The third is opportunity cost, which is how you make something more convenient for them. And then the fourth one is compare and contrast. So the best example I can give you of demonstrating the fear of loss frame is everybody's seen Allstate commercials, right? And I can hear everybody rolling their head or rolling their eyes and, in the back of their head because I mentioned Allstate, but they have the mayhem, right? So they have the commercials with mayhem. Don't let mayhem strike, whatever. The idea there is they're using that fear of loss frame. People have whatever they have, and they don't want something to happen to them to take away what they have. And so therefore you're going to buy the insurance to make sure that you don't lose what you have. And so that's the fear of loss frame that they use in the Allstate commercial. The next one's the experience frame. features and benefits don't really move the needle for people. So if you're just going and you're just talking about features and benefits, that's only part of the equation. The other piece of that is the experience, and this is demonstrated in like a Subaru car commercial. So they'll talk about the Subaru, that it's all-wheel drive and you can fit all this stuff in there and all of this. But what they also do is they show that Subaru in the mountains, people camping by a campfire, and that's the experience. So if you have these features and benefits, and here's how you use them, and this is the experience you're going to have if you buy this particular product. So that's how the experience frame is. So that's how these buying frames work. Okay. So the same thing with opportunity cost and compare and contrast. People need to be able to look at something and say, okay, I understand the differences here, and these differences actually make this a better decision for me. So that's really how the compare and contrast. If they don't have something to compare it to, then they really can't make a buying decision. And this is demonstrated really easily in the good, better, best scenario that we all know in the industry. That's a compare and contrast frame. Okay. So our golden rules of sales is a sales process is just that. It's a process. You cannot shortcut it and get the full results. Okay. The sales process is a path to the logical conclusion for your prospect. It's not a tactic. So what we've got to do is we've got to be able to give them information and lead them down the path that we want them to go through. And then at the end, we are the logical conclusion for them. So that's really what we're trying to do. The presentation is a tool. If it's not properly used, it will not produce the results you're looking for. So you can't have this disjointed, senseless presentation. It won't work. I'm not going to go through all of these, but the idea here is that we present the information a certain way, in a certain method, to get an outcome that we want. And the outcome is we want to have no objections to the sale by the time we're done. And so objections are roadblocks. We've got to remove these roadblocks before they become objections. So this presentation is how you do that. You get the objections out in front, you deal with the objections, and you remove those objections before we present our price. That is why these presentations are so critical. All right, here's some industry facts. In-home demos, presentations, have been used to sell higher end products since the 1950s. We still use them. They're the industry standard. Why? Because they work. So if you want to stop competing on price, this is how you do it. You use a presentation. A better educated buyer will typically spend more money. They see the value in what you bring to the table, even if you're more money. It's kind of like the old like Kirby vacuums, or the vacuums they used to go in, and the rainbow vacuums and all that. They were crazy expensive, but they showed all the things that they did and how you were going to use them in the home, and people were like, wow, these are amazing, they're worth the money. So that's the value of a presentation, of a demo. And then a key component of your sales presentation is the way in which the information is presented. It is vital that you create your materials that follow this process that we're going to lay out. And this process is kind of the presentation standard, how you create a presentation to get the desired outcome you're looking for. All right. Anybody have any questions so far that they want to put in the chat, or do you got any questions so far, Nick?
I'll wait for some chats, some questions to come in, but I really think that it's important to kind of notice, like, a lot of people think that just getting a quote to somebody, leaving it with them, and talking to them later, sending them email, is the way to go. Now, if depending on the market that you're in, it might be a way to go, and it might be for some buyers, but are they your buyers? And I think a big thing that I learned in the industry was, and it took me a while, and my dad had to coach me on it, it's like, not every customer is your customer. And if somebody's not going to kind of follow the rules that you're kind of setting and letting you kind of do that presentation, are they a customer for you? And I think what you're going to see here, everyone, is that this is a foolproof way to really educate that client and make sure that that client is someone that you want to work with and want to kind of make sure that you can close them as well. What do you think about that?
Yeah, the idea that, well, I think the idea that people are just price motivated is it's a narrow viewpoint from my perspective. I've sold in a couple different states. Actually, I sold in a lot of different states when I was going around selling in gyms. And the thing about it is most people are conditioned to buy on price. The reason they're conditioned to buy on price is because that is the only way that they know how to measure the value of that sale. That's what we're taught. So if we educate our homeowner on how to think about this differently, how to think about this purchase differently, then they're no longer a price shopper. And that's what this is about.
I love that. Yeah, it's super important to be able to really bring it down, because like at the end of the day, yeah, people are very focused on price. It's the economy is that people don't like are always looking at that. But if you show them that this is worth it and this is going to save it, that price goes out the window. They want to make sure that they're being taken care of, because they're okay. People are okay spending more money as long as they know that they're getting taken care of during it. So
That's right.
awesome. Let's hop. I don't think there's any questions for there, but guys, if you have any questions as we're going, we're gonna have another break as we go along. So just feel free to put them in. But I think we could jump on to the next one as well.
Okay. Let's see. All right. So these are 6 keys to a great presentation. The first one is you have to have a clear message. If they don't know exactly what you're trying to convey to them, it's going to confuse them, and it's a disaster. The second, you have to be organized with your information. You can't start talking about maybe the installation or the materials and then jump to some other subject that's unrelated that you're trying to convey to them. It has to be organized all the way through. You also need to know the information very well. If you don't, they're going to feel it. You're going to stumble through your presentation, and it's just going to be really awkward for everybody. When you're creating your presentation, you have to keep the desired outcome in mind, whatever that is. So if you're looking to close the sale, well, then your presentation has to be geared against how do I do this so that I pull out the objections that I know are going to come at the end, right? The price objection, or how long have you been in business objection, or, any of the, we've got to think about it objection, whatever the objections are, you've got to keep that in mind so that you develop your presentation to take those objections away. The fifth one is use visual tools. Visual tools are really, really important to help people understand the information and help them retain, recall, and stay engaged. And then the last one, which is super important, when you're done, have a clear call to action. So the first one, clarity in your message is critical. So your company story is the message that you're trying to convey in your presentation. Products and product knowledge is great. All that stuff's great, right? But how does that relate to your company? More importantly, how does that benefit your prospect? So being able to clearly demonstrate that to your prospect is the key to an effective in-home presentation. So I'll give you an example, right? What I see a lot of people do when I would go against them selling in the home is they would give the homeowner an estimate, and they'd give the homeowner maybe, I don't know, an Owens Corning brochure, and they're like, hey, we're Owens Corning Platinum Preferred, whatever. And the homeowner's like, okay, great, right? I mean, that means nothing to them, okay? But if you talk to them about what that means, what that platinum designation means, what you have to have in your company, what requirements you need to meet that. Those are the things that are meaningful to the homeowner. Okay. So it's not that like you're going to put on the best shingle and give them the best warranty. I mean, that's part of it, but they need to know how you're going to handle your project and their project, present them that information, and that makes it easy for them to say yes. That is what we're trying to do here. So when we're looking at what our objective is, right, we always got to keep our objective in mind. The first thing we've got to do when we're doing a presentation is we've got to get to know the people that we're presenting to, right? So if we met one of the homeowners and we didn't meet the other homeowner, we're not going to start presenting to both of them before we get to know the other one. So we need to make sure that we know both homeowners, we understand what they're looking for, what they need, and what they want. And now in our presentation, we'll be able to talk to them in a way that's meaningful to them. We also need to present clear evidence of what our findings are and why there's a need for them to say yes to our proposal. So let's say you're doing a roofing and you do a roofing inspection, you found a bunch of damaged shingles, you found clear evidence that their roof is just smoked. You take pictures of that, you show them clear evidence of what's going on, what your proposal is, what your solution is, and get them to agree that, okay, I do understand why I need this service, so that that doesn't become an objection later on down the road. You want to distinguish your company by key factors that make you different, right? So if you're in a market where there's a bunch of other, Owens Corning installers, everybody's got Owens Corning on their estimate. Well, what makes you different? Why are you different? And how does that benefit them as a homeowner? That's that experience frame. How are they going to have a better experience with you than they are with these other companies? You want to set up the known objections and get them handled before you present your price. So, we look at things like when I was a new company, I knew that might be an objection. So we got that out of the way right off the bat so that it couldn't even become an objection. We always know that, people are going to have price objections. We know people are going to use the old, I need to think about it. We have other estimates coming. We're not ready to make a decision. Whatever the objection is, we know it's coming, and we structure our presentation to pull that objection out, deal with it during the presentation so that it doesn't hamstring us when we ask for the business.
That's huge.
Yeah. We present a price, options, and work scope that's so clear that they won't have any questions about buying into it. Okay. That is another huge one. If you just write on a napkin, 50 square, $23,000 GAF timberline. Okay. That's not a clear work scope. Homeowners are going to have questions. They should have questions. And if they don't feel comfortable, they're not going to be able to buy. So when you present your work scope and your price, your presentation should be so clear that you can get any of the questions out of the way so that doesn't become an objection to the sale. And then you just close the sale and you make money. So here's sort of the process that we use for our presentation. So we get to know our buyers. We do our setup and intro. So we let them know what we'll be covering, which is huge. You set the stage for what you're going to be going through. We show them the evidence of the existing conditions and why they need to say yes to our proposal. Then we go through our presentation. We educate our client on the options available, teach them how to actually interview a contractor, and then pitch the value of our company. We ask trial closing questions. So we do that during our presentation. And what trial closing questions are there questions on those known objections that we know that are coming. And we ask them how they feel about certain things. So we get them to answer so that when those objections come, we can go back to how they answered those trial close questions.
Mm-hmm.
And then we present the proposal with all of their options and the price associated with it. Once we've done that, we ask for the business. So we use this process to get to know our home, get to know our buyers, make sure they understand everything, make sure they don't have any questions, pull out any of the objections that we know inevitably are going to come. And then we present our pricing and our options so we can get them to choose one. And we use a good, better, best, but we present our highest priced option first. And the reason we present our highest priced option first is because then we have somewhere to go that is a little bit less in price than if we would have started with the lower and go up. So I want everybody to realize that our entire job for using this presentation process is to elevate the perception of value and decrease the perception and importance of price.
That's a really big, important thing there. I love that. The fact that I think it's just a lot easier too to present all the options, get their buy-in on all the options, or like I like this bell and whistle and everything else, and I'm ready for it, and provide that. And if they ask for or balk on the price, because you know that that's going to happen, you have something else that's there that is a little bit probably lesser. It is lesser in price, but it's also taking away some of the things that they would have wanted too. So you kind of get them wanting more of like, well, I really did like that over there. So it kind of changes that flow. So that's really, really awesome to kind of see that walkthrough. And I'll put this answering those objections beforehand into like a different scenario and how big it is. I've gone through like demos on products for tech for roofer to use. And I've been going through and writing down my questions as we go along. And this is even on Zoom. And if you know your buyer's objection before they come in there, or the most common ones that come up, so you know your product, you know what you're selling, you know your company, and you answer those before, and you get to the point where you're like, hey, is there any questions at the end of this? And someone goes, actually, no, you answered it all. Like that's when you know you
did
have
a
them.
great job. Yeah.
Yeah, you know you did a great job, and like that's when you know as a salesperson you have them, and that's it was weird being on the other end of that, being like, well, he knows he's got my business already. So that's a
Yeah.
great way of doing that. So understanding your buyer is as important as understanding your competitors.
I'm not super worried about and because I'm in a really competitive market. There's no way I can know my competitors, but I know the industry and I know what most companies do and don't do. But I think more importantly, I understand and I know how that translates into the customer's experience. And that's how we open it up. And that's how we open up our presentation as we talk to them about, I'll just give you the first thing we talk about, right? When we open up our proposal or our presentation rather, the first thing we ask them is, have you ever had a bad experience with a contractor? That's the first thing that we ask them. And most people will say either, yes, we have, or no, we've never bought a, contracting, we've never hired a contractor before. So, okay. So if they say yes, they've had a bad experience with a contractor, then you have like a gold mine there, because you can say, hey, what went wrong? How did it go? What do you wish you would have known before you hired them that you want to know now so you don't make the same mistake? So that is a gold mine if they say yes. If they say no, then you ask them, okay, well, what do you think would be some important things to look for and to do so that you don't have a bad experience? And we'll tell them, like, there's so many complaints and da 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 da. But then we get them to start thinking about this stuff. And so now they're primed for us to talk about all those things that they actually need to do so they don't hire a bad contractor. So that's what I'm talking about, like getting to know your prospect and understanding where they are so that you can meet them with the right information.
That's fantastic.
Yep. No questions out there, huh?
No questions yet. We had the one, but we're going to jump into the call to action at the end, which is great. Everyone else, if you guys have anything, just don't hesitate to put it in the chat. We're happy to help.
All right. So we'll just jump back into this then.
Let's go.
All right. One of the worst things you can do is have a presentation, have a really good presentation, and not know it really, really well, not be able to convey all the information in a way that builds trust and confidence in your prospect. If you know the information really well, you're confident, your flow is good, your body language is good, your tone is good, then your prospect is going to be like, wow, this is amazing. If you're on the other side and you're awkward and you're nervous, it will be a disaster. Even if you're the best option, you have almost zero chance of closing that sale because they're just going to feel like something is wrong. So what happens is, and I've done this before, you abandon that, or you start cherry picking stuff and then you make it worse because there's no cohesion to your presentation. So it's really critical that you practice this. That, like, I know it sounds ridiculous, but sit in front of your computer and just read it off and get to know it. And I used to practice it in my car in between sales calls, and we would role play in the office. And the other thing is you have to stay consistent with it. You've got to do the same thing every single time. I know it seems boring. I know it seems monotonous, but when you do the same thing over and over and over and over, you get good at it and you'll get the results from it. So just half-ass taking this and pulling stuff out that you think is good, and you don't want to say the other stuff and all that. Like, this is why my team, we role play this, and I always quiz them on this. And in our meetings, I'll say, hey, let's go through this, or I'll give them an objection. And how do you handle this? And, tell me what the 6 trial closing questions are. And I always quiz them on that because they need to know this stuff really, really well. You need to keep the desired outcome in mind when you're creating your presentation. The desired outcome obviously is going to be a better educated customer, right? Because we know that they're less likely to shop on price. So think about it from the homeowner standpoint. What is good information that they don't know? Okay. And the one that we always get a really big reaction on when we talk to homeowners is we ask them, did any of the other contractors talk to you about their process if something goes wrong during your project? Has anybody talked to you about it? Right? And obviously, nobody wants to shed light on when something goes wrong, but we're all in construction. We know it happens. Okay. So we asked them, did anybody talk to you about what happens when things go wrong? Did they talk to you about their process? No. Always have really great conversations around that. And that's a key part of our presentation. We talk about that. We bring that out and we let them know, here is what we do. Here's the team we have in place. And here's why you don't need to worry, even if something goes wrong. We got you. Okay. The next one is set your company apart and disqualify other companies without bashing them. That what I just talked about does that as well. So that sets us apart because we talk to them about, hey, listen, this is construction. Things happen. We know that. Everybody knows that. But here's what we do. Here's how we handle it. Here's who you'll be contacted by. Here's, we walk them through that process. Then we have a trial closing question at the end. We say, now, did any of the other companies go through any of this stuff with you? And you can see the homeowner look at you and be like, no, they didn't say anything about any of this. I just disqualified everybody else they talked to without saying a bad word about any of them. So when you're creating your proposal or your presentation, rather, you need to think about how you can set yourself apart and talk about these things that nobody else is going to talk about. And that's bringing out the good, the bad, and the ugly and having a real conversation with your homeowner about what goes on in construction. Go ahead.
I was going to say that I love that part too, is really educating them on how you're different, separating yourself from the competition without bashing is so important. I see in our Facebook groups a lot, people talk about like, well, the other competition is this. Like, stop worrying yourself with the competition. Once you start bashing them, you lower your level down to theirs, and you look weak to the homeowner that you're trying to sell. So it's never a good way to do it. It's always good to elevate them and talk about how you're different.
Yeah, one of the things that I always like to bring up when I'm doing these trainings is you've got to be careful when you're talking to your prospect, right? Because if you I use the family picnic analogy. So if you're at a family picnic and you're sitting there eating, and Jim comes and sits next to you, and the whole time, so Jim's sitting there for about an hour, and the whole time Jim just sits there and talks about Jim. And then after Jim gets up, your mom comes over and says, oh, I see you met Jim. How'd you like Jim? You're going to say, I didn't really like Jim a whole lot. Jim likes Jim enough for everybody, right? You're not going to have a really good opinion of Jim because all he did was sit there and talk about himself. People don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear how great you are. They don't want that. So in order to not become one of those people that just talks about how great their company is, you actually have to be interactive with the homeowner. You have to ask them questions, and you have to present the information based on how they answer those questions. And after you've dealt with enough homeowners, you kind of understand how they do that, how they think, and the things that are important to them. And then you'll figure out how to present the information so it doesn't seem like you're just talking about yourself, but it still lands in a really effective way. Mm-hmm. So the next desired outcome is you got to get the objections out. So knowing what the 4, 5, 6 standard objections are that you normally get when you go to ask for the business, you need to make sure that your presentation addresses those objections. And then at the end, we want to close the sale. We do not make money doing inspections and presentations. We make money by selling and building jobs. So make sure that you keep that at the forefront of your presentation, because that is our desired outcome. The next piece of this is visuals. You have to use visuals when you're doing your presentation. If not, you're just sitting there talking at people. Could you imagine if I was doing this presentation with you guys and I was just sitting here, you're staring at my face while I sit here and talk at you the whole time? You're going to lose interest real quick. You're going to go somewhere else. But at least with this, you can read and understand what I'm trying to tell you. And so these visuals reinforce what I'm talking about. So a visual presentation will also keep a homeowner engaged. Okay. The other thing that is it'll help you train your sales reps easily and more effective. So they'll have a tool that they can use. You can build consistency and make sure that they're following that sales process that you're teaching them. So a visual presentation will do that. Visual tools help people comprehend and process information better and easier. And people are more likely to remember what you're telling them if there's a visual cue associated with that, because you're hitting the audio and you're hitting the visual. And then people are going to pay more. And this is another key part, right? Because they're looking at you now like you are more professional, you are more put together, and you're giving them the, the appearance. I mean, I'm not saying you're not, but I'm saying you're giving them the appearance that you're a better company because no one else is doing this. Most people are leaving an estimate on, maybe they email it to them, maybe they give them an okay looking proposal or whatever. But we're talking about creating a proposal that has a presentation aspect to it, so that they can really understand, follow, and engage in what you're saying. And the last really important part of your presentation, there has to be a call to action. So that would be the next steps, telling them what's next. Okay. So for an example, the first call to action, invite them to ask questions before you move on. Clarify anything that they need. Make sure that they're not confused. Make sure they understand what you're talking about. Invite them to ask questions. That's a call to action. You're giving them an invitation to talk to you. The next piece is telling them the next step. So at the end, you present your price or whatever. You present the option for them to file a claim. You present the option for them to do whatever. You need to tell them what the next steps are. And then the third most important one is ask for the business. Damn it. I've seen so many of my salespeople that I train. They do a great job. They get all the way to the end, or they handle an objection or whatever it is, and then they just simply forget to ask for the business. So the way that we do it, that's pretty disarming, and it's not really like, hey, okay, are you ready to go? Or, whatever cheesy, call to action you got there. We ask them to say, okay, if you don't have any questions, because we trial close them, and at the end we invite them to ask any questions. We make sure that they're clear on everything, and we say, okay, if you don't have any questions, you feel comfortable with us, let's go ahead and get you on the schedule. We have some colors on the next page. Let's go ahead and pick those out. Okay. I'm telling them the next steps, and I'm asking them for the business. And that's when they're typically going to give you the objections. And now you can go back and rehash what they've already said earlier on about the objections, so that you can handle those, get over them, and then ask for the business again.
That's such a clean way of asking for the business too. It's like, it's disarming, it's helpful, it's compassionate, and then it's just like leading them to the trial close is very important, and kind of setting that as next steps. But then to ask for the business with next steps involved, it's super clean, and then they just it's like following them to water. It's perfect.
It really is. And the thing that we got to think about is, now Roofer, they have a proposal creating tool, right? And so one of the easiest ways to do this, and so I don't want people to think this has to be a really complicated, long drawn out thing. You need some sort of technology or whatever. That's not the case. So for us, like, here, I'll just show you real quick. For us, what we've been able to do is we've been able to take something as simple as like Google Slides, right? So on Google Slides here, I'll show everybody. Whoops. So like, for an example, on Google Slides, right, we have a presentation that you can create in PDF format, And it just walks through what we just talked about. So, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, here are the 4 things we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about your inspection. We're going to talk about choosing a contractor. We're going to talk a little bit about us. And then we're going to talk about next steps. We go through our inspection process. We talk about how we grade roofs so they can understand why we're making the recommendation that we are. We talk about where we look for damage on their roofs or whatever's going on, what we're inspecting, the thoroughness, and then here we are. Have you ever had a bad experience with a contractor? And this is where we start to have our dialogue. So here, all we're doing is we're setting the stage, right? We're letting them know what we're going to cover. We talk about the process. We talk about how we grade roofs. We talk about what we found on their roof. We get them to buy into our solution. And once we've done that, now we've established that they have a need. They understand they have a need, and they've agreed they have a need. And now we're going to talk about, okay, so now you're going to hire a contractor. How do you do that? Right? We go through some industry stuff. And then we go back to, so how do you choose the right contractor? We have this conversation. This is what I'm talking about, being interactive with them, allowing them to tell you how they're viewing this, what they know, what they don't know, what's important to them. And so now when they answer these questions, now I know how to speak to them in a way that's going to land because they've told me sort of how they're thinking about this project. And then we talk about how to choose a contractor. What's the best way to look at some benchmarks of quality contractors? And this is the way that we set ourselves apart, but we also set up our competition to disqualify them. And then we go in our about us. And so what we've done is we take that and we upload it into the roofer dashboard. And I don't know if anybody's seen the roofer dashboard, but I'll show you. So we have our roofer dashboard, and you have all your proposals that you can create. You have all your templates that you can create. And we have a ton of templates that we've got created. And so for an example, we have this, excuse me. We have this template so that people can, oh no, I don't want to do that. We have this template so that my sales team can go in here and they already have all of this stuff built in here for the presentation. And then we have our price estimates at the end of the presentation. So it's a really seamless presentation, proposal, and then close the sale. So we do this on iPads. It's the easiest way to do it because it shows up really nicely. So that's what I'm talking about. It's just having an easy, cohesive process that you can use a tool like Roofer for and make it really easy to do your presentation. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. All your sales team will be doing the same exact thing. They'll say the same things, and you'll tell the company story consistently, and you'll close more sales, guaranteed.
And what's really cool about that is, like, going back to what you talked about earlier on about knowing your process and knowing your info, knowing your stuff, because once you start not knowing it, you sound sketchy, like something is going to go wrong. And if you have it set up like in a presentation like that, where each card has a different theme, you're going to be able to create that replicable process that they could completely do that, and it's scalable, not just for that one sales rep, but for it growing a team. You create a standardized replicable process that you can build and grow your team on, so that you could hire the right people for it. And you could also, I'll use a line from our good friend Ty Backer: hire fast and fire fast. This will give you the ability to understand and hire someone and get them moving quickly. And if they're not following the processes, you're able to identify it quickly because it's a replicable process that's set up there, and you can get rid of the bad players if necessary. And that
Yep.
opens up the door to a lot more cohesiveness, a good amount of like a training and camaraderie between the team. And like you said, the ability to close more deals, because what makes a good salesperson, it comes down to creating that revenue for you and your company, and they're going to be happy because it's going to be created for you're going to get that money back on your end too.
Yeah, the way to think about that is your process, your sales process, your presentation, whatever, it has to be trainable, it has to
Mm-hmm.
be scalable, and it has to be repeatable.
Mm-hmm.
So if you use those, if you use those three building blocks to create, well, any process in your company, you're going to be much better off for it. And you hit the nail on the head. This is really about being able to plug your, it's really about being able to plug your new sales team in a process, in a, in a way that you're going to shorten their learning curve. You're going to stress yourself out as an owner a lot less. You're going to bring some consistency. And I guarantee you, if you do that, they're going to be more successful and your retention is going to be way higher.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Yeah.
And that retention comes too. Like I always say, when you have a replicable process like that, it's how quickly they can get onboarded too.
Yep.
And when you're saying that's going to take less stress on you, but they're going to start making money, so they're going to be happy. You're going to start making money, so they're happy, and everybody else is going to work well together. It's getting them onboarded fast, not only well but fast onboarded. So that's great.
Yeah. You're taking that, like, you're taking that wild card of, I was just talking to another company owner earlier today, and he said, yeah, well, I just take them out and I train them. And I was like, okay, like, do you have like a written SOP to train them on? He's like, no, I just teach them what to do. And I said, okay, well, how do you teach them what to say? And how do you teach them, how do you hold them accountable? And how do you like reinforce that stuff with them? And he's like, I guess I don't really have anything in place. And I was like, that's why you're so frustrated with training your sales team,
Yeah,
because there's no consistency there from starting from leadership. So how can there be consistency down the line? And this is my shameless plug. We will create these for you. I will create these for you. You can hire me to create these for you. We have some great resources to do that. The reason I didn't this wasn't a training on like how to actually do it exactly is because people have different different selling propositions depending on where they are in business. Like, some people have been in business for 20 years. Some people have been in business for 3 years. Some people have, 500 reviews. Some people have 100. So we need to think about what your selling proposition is before we create these presentations. So it's not a one size fits all kind of thing. But
totally.
we're gonna reach out. We're gonna send you some links to some resources we have. Up here in the chat, there is a free ebook that we're giving you. It's an 11-page ebook, and it'll walk you through the structure of a sales department and understanding how that. And it's completely free. It'll give you a really good idea on how to structure your sales department and what you need to put in place for you guys to be successful with your sales department.
Do yourselves a favor, everyone, and click on that link there. You can download it there, put your information in, and to give a shameless plug back to our friend Corey here. Just remember, he's on the CEO panel at RoofCon. So if anybody's coming out to RoofCon, come see our boy Corey. Come up there and talk with the rest of the leaders that built their business and gotten them to where they are.
We're doing a breakout session with tech with Process Pete too. So I'm doing.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm doing a
Double
couple
hit.
things at RoofCon this year. Yep.
Very exciting. Awesome. Well, any last things to say here before we sign off?
I'm gonna put my my email in the chat.
Sweet.
Oh no, it won't let me do it.
It does that. It's weird how it adds the at thing in to a space before the at, and it should work or after the at. But guys, we're going to be doing this next week as well for our third and final class. So looking forward to seeing you guys all there to see how we kind of finalize it. What are we going to be talking about, Corey?
We are going to be talking about the last piece, which is your estimate, and how to use that to actually close the sale and how to handle those objections. So that's what we're going to talk about.
Excellent.
And yeah, and guys, listen, I put my email in the chat. If I don't care if you just have questions, email me. I mean, I'm an open book. I'm not just trying to sell you something. I want to help people do better, be better, sell better in this industry. So please feel free to reach out. It's not, don't worry. I'm not just trying to sell you something. So I'm offering my help, and I'm offering, if you want these done for you, we can do that as well. So please reach out.
Sweet. Well, thanks everybody. Thank you, Corey. Excited to see you guys next week for our third and final spot on the series. See you guys at RoofCon as well in a couple weeks. And if you guys are around Charlotte and San Antonio next week, we do have Rise coming out there. So be sure to register. It's going to be a blast. So it's been we got a sold out show today in New Jersey with Process Pete. So see you all next time, and we'll talk to you then.
See you guys.